Hey everybody, tonight's video is called The Kingly Bridegroom, and tonight we continue our pass-through study here on this Good Friday as we continue our pass-through of the Book of Solomon, where we're looking at a troubled night leading to the wedding procession. So, I know this is not very Good Friday-like, but preach the word in season and out of season. God's word matters all the time. So, Song of Solomon, chapter 3, verse 1 through 3, says, By night on my bed I sought the one I love. I sought him, but I did not find him. I will rise now, I said, and go about the city, in the streets and the squares. I will seek the one I love. I sought him, but I did not find him. The watchmen who go after the city found me. I said, Have you seen the one I love? So we see, as we kick off this brand new chapter here in chapter 3, that she repeated the phrase once in each of the verses. She says, the one I love. And she's expressing her exclusive love for Solomon. And she's alone on her bed, intensely desiring to be with him. And it's frustrating and tensing her, this feeling that she has. And she boldly takes the initiative to go out and find him. And watchmen, we're going to see again in chapter 5, verse 6 through 8. And they patrolled the streets at the time of night. And some will argue that chapter 3 here is speaking of her having a dream of some kind, or a daydream, as in the previous chapter. And in verse 4, it says, Sarcely had I passed by them, when I found the one I love. I held him and would not let him go, until I brought him to the house of my mother, and into the chamber of her who conceived me. So the Shulamite finds Solomon in her dreams and brings him to where she actually resides, her mother's house. In verse 5, I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by the does of the field, do not stir up nor awaken love until it pleases. So, as in back in chapter 2, verse 7, the beloved knows that the intensity of her love for Solomon cannot be yet experienced until the wedding. So, she invites the daughters of Jerusalem to keep her accountable regarding sexual purity. And up to this point, the escalation desire of the Shulamite woman for Solomon has been expressed in veiled and delicate ways as compared to the explicit and open expressions which follow, as it would be totally appropriate for a married couple. In verse 6 through 8, Who is this coming out of the wilderness, like pillars of smoke, perfumed with myrrh and frankincense, with all the merchants' fragrant powders? Behold, it is Solomon's couch, with 60 valiant men around it, of the valiant of Israel. They all hold swords, being expert in war. Every man has a sword on his thigh, because of fear in the night. So, from this point into chapter 5 portrays the king coming for his bride and their return to Jerusalem. And Solomon's men formed a bodyguard system alike, protection from raiders. Especially, they were covering things such as weddings that were celebrated at nightfall. And verse 8 has a double reference, as night is used also in verse 1, which was spoiled by the young woman's own terror by nights. And these fears are banished, at least for a time, by splendid vision of Solomon with his fighting men. In verse 7, Solomon's couch, it's different from verse 1. And couch in verse 7 does not have a sexual meaning to it. In Charles Spurgeon, he used this text to show that this answers the fears of people that have about God's church on this earth. And Charles Spurgeon said, all good men are dead. there are none left to guard the church as before. Yet by symbolic application, the text shows that there are enough guards for the church, that there are valiant guards for the church. There are guards in the right places all about the church. The good guards of the church are well armed, well trained, and always ready and watchful. So, as I mentioned prior, Charles Spurgeon believed the book of Song of Solomon was to be allegorized. And to go with his viewpoint right there, I just want to make a comment that I personally believe in having security ministry for the church. And I will never endorse Joe Osteen unless he repents and preaches the true gospel. But one thing I give Joe Osteen's church credit for is their security team. And if you recall, about a month or two ago now, there was an active shooter that showed up at Lakewood Church that went in, with whatever motives she had. She brought her kid with her, all that. And she, we don't know how many people she was thinking of trying to kill, but because the church had, their building, they had security at it, armed security, they were able to confront the evil woman and, remove her. But to carry on here, verse 9 through 11 says, Of the wood of Lebanon, Solomon the king made himself a palanquin. He made its pillars of silver, its support of gold, its seat of purple, its interior paved with love. By the daughters of Jerusalem, go forth, O daughters of Zion, and see King Solomon with the crown, with which his mother crowned him, on the day of his wedding, the day of the gladness of his heart. So we see that the chapter ends in 11 verses here, and this narrative would be better understood as spoken by the daughters of Jerusalem, who are also called the daughters of Zion. And for the fourth time, she pictures her lover as a king. And crown in verse 11 isn't speaking of a king's crown, but a sort of garland that was worn by brides and grooms at ancient weddings. And this custom was abandoned by the Jews in their sorrow caused by the tragic war with Rome and the loss of Jerusalem in 70 AD. And the rabbinic proverb states that a bridegroom resembles a king. And mothers played a prominent role in these weddings at the time, and especially so did Solomon's mother play a role throughout Song of Solomon. And same thing today with weddings in the American culture. A lot of weddings, a huge part of it is the bride's mother that is, making, running stuff behind the scenes. And one thing to note here is there's no reference to a father, which is keeping with what is found in other love poetry of the ancient Near East. And we know the real Solomon had many weddings, as 1 Kings 11:3 tells us. And this one day in view here may be a romantic ideal or a fond remembrance. But Solomon, he shows two essential things a lady should seek in a future husband. And no, not one of them is a polygamous guy. One of them, he must be able to protect you. If he can't protect you, you don't want him. Number two, he must provide for you. When you marry, you become one, and whatever belongs to him now belongs to the wife also, against contrary of popular belief that everything belongs to the woman. But boys must grow up and become men before they can become a good husband. If he's a boy, you don't need him. And the maiden respected and honored her beloved, seeing his strength and authority as a good thing, not as a threatening thing, as her strength and authority would be one with him. And some will argue, how did Solomon write this book when his heart was drawn to thousands of women as they drew his heart from God? How can Solomon be the bridegroom in this book? How can these collection of love poems come from such a corrupted man? Those are some pretty good questions. And this song likely originated before his crowning in his most innocent period. Yet the mention of Solomon's mother reminds us of Bathsheba and the period where she helped Solomon take the throne of Israel in 1 Kings chapter 1. And the connection to 1 Kings 1 brings up the relation of the maiden of the Song of Solomon, also known as the Shulamite, and Abishag, the Shunammite, mentioned in 1 Kings chapter 1, verse 3 and 4, and 1 Kings 1, verse 15. And from ancient times, many have wanted to associate the beautiful Abishag with the Shulamite. And a theory is that she ministered to King David, she became romantically involved with his son Solomon, and was later subject of his love poem. Yet that is speculation as best, as Shunem isn't the same as Shulam. And Shunem is the modern Solem, approximately 11 kilometers southeast of Nazareth and 5 kilometers north of Jezreel in Issachar territory, and was visited by Elijah back in 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 8. And there's no evidence that Abishag identifies with the Shulamites. And their wedding was a day of gladness because of their love was real, their love was passionate, their love was pure. And their love was restrained into proper channels. And weddings ought to be where all participants taste the sweetness of the bride and the groom's joy. That is the main atmosphere of a wedding. We attend a wedding to support two coming together as one flesh and to celebrate their joy of, their institution by God. And so to wrap up today's video, we look tonight at the restless maiden searching for her beloved. And bed is often a reference for sexual intimacy. Now I want to look at Hebrews 13 verse 4. This is pretty much our theme verse, I would say, with this book. Hebrews 13:4, marriage is honorable among all, and the bed undefiled, but fornicators and adulterers God will judge. So we should note that the Bible consistently condemns sex outside of the marriage institution, and we're going to really be harping on that tomorrow. And the Bible celebrates sexual love within the commitment of marriage as indicated in the book of Song of Solomon. And verse 4 shows us the maiden longing to find her beloved. And ever reunite with someone you've missed and you embrace them with a long hug? Have you ever, especially if you've been in the military and you've gone away for months away from your family, when you come back from your deployment, that long hug when you see each other again that day is an amazing feeling. It is something you don't want to let go of. And I recall when I went to Guam on the THAAD missile deployment back in 2013, I came home on our anniversary on October 3rd. And my time was all messed up because Guam has a different date and time with the international date and time change. So they were like a day ahead of what it was in Hawaii. But I remember seeing my wife for the first time in person in just about 6 months. And, soldiers, they go away for much longer than that. A soldier can deploy up to 2 years at a time, depending, what the world conflict is. But just remembering the embracing moment of that hug. So we see that she clings to him when she finds him. And the embrace we see reminds me of Mary Magdalene's embrace of Jesus when she first saw her resurrected Lord. And I want to go over to John chapter 20, verse 16 and 17. So here you go. You're some might be like, oh, you didn't touch on the resurrection or anything. during, this Easter week or Resurrection week, whatever you want to refer to it as. But let's look at John chapter 20, verse 16 and 17. So this is after the resurrection of Christ. It says, Jesus said to her, Mary. She turned and said to him, Rabboni, which is to say, teacher. Jesus said to her, do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to my Father. But go to my brethren and say to them that I am ascending to my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God. So I did want to make another comment about Charles Spurgeon's application of verse 4 of how the maiden's progress toward her beloved can be applied to us coming to faith. So he argued, she loved him, we must love Christ. She sought him, we must seek Christ. She found him not, but sought him. She found him, she held him, therefore we hold on to Christ. And she brought him. In Spurgeon, he preached that we need to grasp Christ by faith. So, like I said from the first video, I'm not one, that believes this book is meant to be allegorized. Sure, it can paint us another picture of things, but I just wanted to share Charles Spurgeon's thoughts on it. And chapter 3, verse 5 is an exhortation to the maiden's companions. Verses 6 through 8, Solomon's bodyguards escort the maiden to the wedding. And then we see that the chapter ends, a very short chapter, ends with Solomon enthroned and crowned. So that's going to wrap up today's video. We'll see you next as we look at the beauty of their consummated love tomorrow. So there will be a video tomorrow on chapter 4. I hope that you're able to join, and I hope that you have a great, blessed weekend up ahead. God bless.